My mother told the story of making my first purchase at Miss Corbett's Notion store in Columbus, Ohio, at age 4. And the conversation reported by Miss Corbett was that when she asked what I thought I wanted to buy, I said, well, probably I want a car. So my interest in automobiles dates back to childhood days. And then in 1940, my parents bought an American Bantam, and at age 14, going on 15, I drove the Bantam from Columbus, Ohio, all over New England and back home again, some 4,600 miles. Then in 1955, I made my first purchase of a collector car, which I still own 63 years later, a 1940 Packard Oa, the Cabriolet. And interestingly enough, the car which preceded that was sold this last weekend in Shipshewana. It was a 1928 Hudson with a Murphy-bodied town car. And that only sold for $313,000. And I had a chance to buy that in 1957 from the estate for $400. But I thought one car was enough. Well, actually, I had two at that point. So my car interests go way. The first car was a Packard, the second car was a Packard, the third car was a Packard, the fourth car was a Packard. Then I began to develop a miscellany collection of some General Motors projects and a couple of Bantams. So it's been out of hand for some time. At least that's what my son tells me. He has the disease too, but he's been much more circumspect in his accumulation of vehicles. I was asked to represent the Ario's Museum in the very early discussions about what later became MotorCities. And this would have been in the late 1900s. And I regularly went to the Detroit area to participate in those early formative conversations. I think the discussions went on close to 2 years, and there may well have been conversations that I was not aware of prior to that time. Then we hired an outside counsel to help us think our way through, and it was actually that group that proposed the name MotorCities. Some of us were concerned because of the confusion of thinking of Detroit as the Motor City, but the concept of Motor Cities, plural, prevailed and was endorsed, and that was part of the original proposed legislation. Then my most active role was actually in assuming a leadership function here in the Lansing area to establish a Lansing area corridor. And I served as the coordinator or the facilitator in the early stages of that group until I left the area for 7 years. But I had 4 years of helping to establish the Lansing corridor, and we intentionally drew on a wide range of people from government, from Oldsmobile, from the education sector, from labor, and through
the broad tapestry of the community.
Threw things out quite broadly to help a cross-section of the community think about ways in which Lansing had already contributed to the development of the automobile, and what were things that we needed to spotlight to help others in the community understand Lansing's contribution to the automobile industry. The cleanup and showcasing of Durant Park was one major accomplishment. And then we began to develop signage of significant sites in the area. We had just celebrated Oldsmobile's centennial in 1997, and so there was a kind of a carryover of interest that we were able to capture, and we did have very direct involvement of the Oldsmobile leadership at that time. But we were still a GM town, thanks to the efforts of folks under the leadership of David Hay, or David Hollister and Ray Hutcherson, with the focus on the development of the book, The Second Shift, and the documentary that preceded it. So all of that, again, was a part of the milieu that helped us focus on the automobile industry in Lansing. I think we need to revisit the work we've done with schools, because my concern is that people who have assumed leadership roles in the development of MotorCities are, like myself, victims, if you will, of the aging process. And we need to cultivate an appreciation for automotive history and the young people who will assume leadership roles in the future in things like MotorCities.